Today, we're diving deep into the sands of time, into a civilization where the line between the earthly and the divine was as thin as a desert breeze. We'll head to the banks of a mighty river, the Nile, the lifeblood of one of the most fascinating cultures to ever exist, ancient Egypt. This river was more than just water flowing. It was the heartbeat of their world, setting the pace for life and death, fertility and renewal. Every year when the Nile rose and flooded the land, it was for the Egyptians a powerful symbol of life's cycle, a grand metaphor for rebirth following inevitable departure. And within this mix of mystery and reverence lies one of their most intriguing paradoxes: how an animal as familiar and domestic as the cat became more than just a pet, rising to the status of a central deity, a symbol of the sacred and eternal for a civilization that lasted thousands of years. That's the first question we'll explore tonight as we uncover the secrets of a faith where cats were gods and scarabs were lucky charms. Before we get started, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always cool to see who's joining us from around the world. I'm the Nighttime Scribe, and my goal is to give you a unique experience as you wind down for the night. At first glance, Egyptian religion might seem like a maze of contradictions. There's a huge and varied lineup of gods, many with animal heads, shape-shifting deities, and overlapping roles. Was it just pure polytheism with countless gods all worshipped equally? Or was it more like henotheism, where many gods are acknowledged but usually one gets the main focus at a time, like the worship of a moon in Thebes or Ra in Heliopolis? The truth is, things were a lot more fluid. The gods blended together, their traits shifting depending on the place and time, showing an amazing flexibility in how people understood the divine. But beneath all this complexity, one core idea stood out: the endless pursuit of Maat. Maat wasn't just a goddess. She was the embodiment of cosmic order, truth, justice, and balance. Keeping Maat meant keeping the world running smoothly, ensuring the Nile thrived, and maintaining harmony between humans and gods. She was the foundation of their entire universe, a constant quest for stability in a world that seemed always at risk of chaos. Within this intricate web of beliefs, the bond between Egyptians and animals was unbreakable. Unlike many cultures that saw animals as mere resources or lower creatures, Egyptians viewed them as living reflections of the divine, carriers of sacred traits. Each animal represented a quality or aspect of a god. The falcon stood for Horus, the jackal for Anubis, the crocodile for Sobek. But among them, the cat held a truly special place. Not only was it a skilled hunter protecting their grain stores, but its grace, independence, and glowing eyes gave it an air of mystery, a guardian of the home, and ultimately a symbol of fertility, motherhood, and the goddess Bastet herself. Here's where the practical met the sacred, and the domestic cat rose to divine status. So if Maat stood for order, why does their religion seem so strange to us today? The answer lies in the Egyptians' deep and constant fascination with animals and the supernatural. This wasn't just superstition, it was a fundamental way of understanding the cosmos. Divinity wasn't limited to temples or altars, it showed up everywhere, especially in the strength, grace, or mystery of animals. This connection influenced every part of their lives, from the grand statues in temples to the animal figures honored in ordinary homes. These divinized animals weren't just symbols. They were believed to be actual incarnations of the gods, or at least vessels holding their spirit and power. That's why they were treated with extreme respect, even mummified in vast numbers to be buried as offerings. Alongside this came a rich culture of amulets, small objects packed with meaning and magical protection. Two stand out as perfect examples: the cat and the scarab. The cat, as we've seen, was more than a pest controller. It was linked to fertility, protection, and the goddess Bastet, earning an almost unmatched status. It became a common amulet promising safety to the home and family. Meanwhile, the scarab, the dung beetle pushing its ball of dung, became sacred as Khipri. For the Egyptians, this beetle's push mirrored the sun god Ra, pushing the sun across the sky. So the scarab symbolized rebirth, ongoing creation, and eternity. Scarab amulets were worn by both the living and the dead, symbolizing renewal in this life and hope for resurrection in the next. This rich mix of beliefs where animals and the supernatural were so deeply linked is what makes Egyptian religion endlessly fascinating and, yes, a bit strange. Now that we've laid the groundwork, it's time to dive into the most famous feline figure in their pantheon, Bastet. She's the perfect example of feline divinity, but her story is more complex than you might expect. Bastet's origins are closely tied to the fierce Sekhmet, the lioness goddess, warrior daughter of Ra, and bringer of destruction and plagues. Both shared the fierce and unstoppable power of big cats. But over time, as Egyptian society grew more settled and focused on home life, Bastet's image softened, shifting from the wild lioness into the familiar domestic cat. Why the change? It probably reflected a need to see divinity not just in the awe-inspiring and scary, but also in the everyday, the close-to-home protector. The cat, with its grace, its skill at hunting pests, and its maternal nature, became the perfect symbol of these gentler qualities. So Bastet's role and influence expanded. She stopped being just a fierce destroyer and became the goddess of the home, protector of family and children. She was linked to fertility and motherhood, celebrating abundance and life itself. But she was also the goddess of joy, music, and dance, a patron of celebrations and life's pleasures. People believed she guarded against disease and evil spirits, serving as an invisible protector in every Egyptian household. Her dual nature is what made her so beloved and respected. The softness of a purring, affectionate cat curled up by the fire, offering comfort and companionship. Yet underneath, the fierce lioness spirit, ready to fiercely defend her family and unleash her wrath on anyone who threatened order or safety. This balance of grace and power made her a complex deity, both feared and loved. You see Bastet everywhere in Egyptian art, in countless statues often showing a woman with a cat's head or just a graceful, watchful, seated cat. These weren't just decorations. They were objects of worship kept on home altars and in tombs. Amulets with her image were worn by people from all walks of life, asking for her protection. And of course, grand temples were dedicated to her, most famously at Bubastis, where huge festivals celebrated her with music, dancing, and joyful revelry that honored the goddess's fun-loving side. These temples were also home to sacred cats, cared for with deep reverence, believed to be living embodiments of Bastet herself. The cult of Bastet wasn't a minor thing. It was a powerful and ever-present force reflecting how important the goddess was in both daily and spiritual life. If there was one place where Bastet's spirit was strongest, it was Bubastis, known as Per Bastet or House of Bastet, in the Nile Delta region of Lower Egypt. Bubastis was the heart of her worship from the Old Kingdom on, but it really hit its peak during the Third Intermediate and Late periods, especially under the 21st dynasty of Libyan origin, which made Bubastis its capital. The temple there was an architectural marvel and a major pilgrimage site. The Greek historian Herodotus, who visited Egypt around the 5th century BCE, was so impressed he wrote about it in detail. He said that while it wasn't the biggest or most expensive temple, it was the most beautiful. What set it apart was its location. It sat in the city center, surrounded by canals, almost like an island. Herodotus described 2 canals running from the Nile to the temple, lined with trees, creating a grand entrance. The temple walls were decorated with carvings telling Bastet's story and showing the festivals held in her honor. Inside was her sanctuary with her cult statue and large enclosures where thousands of sacred cats were bred and cared for. These cats lived in luxury, ate the best food, and when they died, they were mummified with great respect and buried in special cemeteries, many of which have been found full of millions of cat mummies. Bubastis was important not just for its stunning architecture, but as a spiritual and social hub. It was a gathering place for celebrations and deep connection with the divine, where the goddess's presence was felt through her feline representatives. Herodotus said the festivals for Bastet were the most popular and lively in all of Egypt, outshining even those at Sais or Busiris. The main event, called the Feast of Bastet, or the Festival of Drunkenness, happened every year and drew hundreds of thousands of pilgrims from across the country. Imagine this. Herodotus said people traveled packed into boats along the Nile. Women played the sistrum, a percussion instrument, while singing and dancing, and the men cheered and joined the fun. When they reached Bubastis, the party only got wilder. Music, dance, and plenty of wine filled the air. People drank heavily, not just to get drunk, but as part of a ritual to reach an ecstatic state, helping them feel closer to the goddess. They believed wine helped lower their inhibitions, so they could connect with Bastet's joyful and freeing spirit. The processions were electric, with priests and priestesses carrying the goddess's statue, followed by crowds chanting hymns and making offerings. It was a time of life-affirming joy and release from daily worries, a moment when Mot's order was relaxed so people could celebrate life, fertility, and the goddess's protection. This was one of the most accessible and joyful sides of Egyptian religion, honoring the fullness of life and the pleasure of existence. Within this very focused cult, Bastet's priests and priestesses played a crucial role. They were the keepers of the rituals, guardians of the temple, and the link between the goddess and her followers. Their main job was to maintain daily worship, offering food, incense, and flowers, saying prayers, and making sure the cult statue was always cared for and purified. But their duties went beyond just the rituals. They were also responsible for breeding and caring for the temple's sacred cats. This was a huge responsibility and honor, since these animals were seen as living embodiments of the goddess. They were fed, protected, and closely watched for any signs or omens. The priests also handled the mummification of cats that passed away, making sure they received a proper and respectful burial fitting for a deity's representative. Bastet's priestesses held especially important roles, given the goddess's connection to fertility, motherhood, music, and dance. Women played leading parts, reflecting feminine power and the ability to give life. They actively took part in festivals, leading songs and dances, and served as a spiritual connection for women hoping for Bastet's blessing on fertility or the safety of their children. Being a priest or priestess of Bastet was a respected profession, often passed down through families and brought significant social status. They interpreted the goddess's will, organized grand celebrations, and preserved a cultural and spiritual legacy that lasted thousands of years, keeping the spirit of the goddess cat alive in Egypt's heart. Although Bastet is the most famous feline deity in the Egyptian pantheon, she wasn't the only one. The presence of other big and small cats in their divine world highlights just how deeply Egyptians revered these animals and their ability to represent both kind and fearsome sides of the sacred. One of the most powerful and intimidating is Sekhmet, whose name means the powerful. She's shown with a lioness's head and a solar disk above it. Sekhmet embodies the sun's destructive power, the desert's burning heat, and divine fury. Her story is tied to a famous legend. Ra, the sun god, created her to punish humanity after they rebelled. Sekhmet carried out the task with such brutality that she slaughtered people by the thousands. Ra had to step in, tricking her by mixing beer with red ochre to look like blood, which intoxicated her and saved humanity from total destruction. Still, Sekhmet had a fascinating dual nature. Despite her fierce appearance, she was also a healing goddess. Her rage could bring epidemics and illness, but she also had the power to cure and protect against them. Many of her priests worked as physicians, and statues of Sekhmet were placed in temples and homes to keep disease away. This mix of destruction and healing reflects the Egyptian idea that divine forces, even when terrifying, were necessary to maintain cosmic balance. Sekhmet was closely linked to Ra. She was his eye, his protector, and the executor of his will, showing his most intense and unstoppable power. Going further back, even before Bastet and Sekhmet became prominent, there was Mafdet, considered by many the earliest feline goddess in Egypt. Mafdet's cult goes back to the early dynastic period. Unlike Bastet, often shown as a domestic cat, or Sekhmet as a lioness, Mafdet appeared as a wild cat, like a cheetah or lynx, or a woman with a feline head. Her main job was to protect against snakes and scorpions, dangerous creatures that threatened people in Egypt's deserts. She was called upon to guard homes and royalty from these venomous pests, and was linked to executing the pharaoh's enemies. It was even believed she could behead the king's foes with her claws or a knife she carried. Her cult was one of the earliest signs of how much Egyptians respected cats' hunting skills and their role in keeping chaos at bay. Beyond individual gods, the lioness was a powerful symbol of royalty and strength in ancient Egypt. This majestic predator, with its might, ferocity, and commanding presence, represented the qualities a pharaoh was expected to have. Kings identified with lions and lionesses to project power and invincibility. The most famous example is the Great Sphinx of Giza, a huge statue with the body of a lion and the head of a human, likely Pharaoh Khafre. The lion's body symbolizes strength and protection, while the human head stands for intelligence and divinity. The Sphinx wasn't just a monument. It was a mighty guardian watching over the pyramids and the land of the dead, a lasting tribute to the lioness's symbolic power. Feline influence even extended to other major gods. Ra himself, the sun god, could take feline form. In one of the most important myths about the afterlife, Ra turns into a giant cat to fight his enemy, the primordial serpent Apophis. Apophis, representing chaos and darkness, tried every night to swallow Ra's solar boat and throw the universe into chaos. At the climax of this journey through the underworld, Ra, transformed into a huge cat, uses a knife to behead and defeat Apophis, guaranteeing the sunrise and the continuation of cosmic order. This story not only shows the cat as a protector against evil, but raises its status to a cosmic level, making it a key player in the ongoing drama of creation and renewal. So as you can see, cats in ancient Egypt weren't just pets or symbols. They were complex divine beings woven through every level of religion, from guarding homes to protecting the entire cosmos. This helps explain why a civilization so obsessed with order and balance saw the cat's grace and fierceness as a perfect reflection of the divine. Beyond their role in the gods' world, cats had a real affectionate place in Egyptians' daily lives. They were the most special animals in the household, and their relationship with people was one of deep connection and love. The story of the cat in ancient Egypt is one of the earliest and most successful examples of domestication. The origin of cat domestication of the species Felis sylvestris libica, the African wildcat, goes back to around 4000 BCE in the Near East. But it was in Egypt where this relationship really took hold and became firmly established, probably around 2000 BCE. It wasn't a deliberate act of training, but more of a natural partnership. Cats were attracted to human settlements because of the abundance of rodents invading grain stores. The Egyptians, whose economy depended heavily on grain, quickly realized just how valuable these little hunters were. Their role in controlling pests, mice, snakes, even scorpions, made them indispensable, turning them from occasional visitors into beloved household members. This close relationship is vividly reflected in Egyptian daily life and immortalized in their art. Countless touching depictions show cats not only as skilled hunters, but as part of family life. We see them in tomb frescoes and papyri, often curled up peacefully beneath their owners' chairs, showing their role as loyal companions. Famous scenes portray cats hunting birds in marshes, or even sneaking fish under banquet tables, highlighting their presence during leisure and mealtime alongside the family. These images weren't just decorations, they were heartfelt testimonies to the affection Egyptians had for their cats. We even have some interesting details about cat names from that era. Although many records haven't survived, we know some cats were given onomatopoeic names like Miu or Mutt, which mean cat or female cat, and imitate the meow. Others had descriptive names like the beautiful or the sweet, or names based on their color or personality. There are even records of cats named after gods, showing just how special they were. In short, the cat became much more than just a pet or pest controller. It was a symbol of domestic prosperity and protection. Its presence meant safe food supplies, healthy children protected from snakes and scorpions, and by extension, Bastet's blessing on the home. A home with a cat was a blessed, prosperous, and protected home. A little paradise where feline divinity was part of everyday life. The Egyptians' deep bond with their cats is a lasting reminder of how a practical relationship can grow into something profoundly spiritual and affectionate. Their respect for cats went well beyond simple fondness. It was written into laws and customs that would surprise us today. A cat's life was so sacred that harming one could mean death for the offender. Laws protecting cats in Egypt were incredibly strict, reflecting their status as sacred animals and divine symbols. It wasn't just respect for a useful creature or symbol. It was considered a direct offense against the gods. Reverence for cats was so strong that exporting them outside Egypt was banned. It was believed that taking a cat out of the country offended Bastet and could bring bad luck. In fact, there are records of military missions and spies sent to recover cats smuggled abroad, showing how seriously this was taken. Cats weren't mere property, they were beings under divine protection. The harshest penalty was death for killing a cat, even accidentally. There was no excuse for negligence or lack of intent. If someone was caught causing a cat's death, the crowd might lynch them on the spot, or they'd be brought to court and sentenced to death. This was one of the very few crimes that carried the death penalty no matter the circumstances, showing how deeply this belief was held. There are stories that highlight this severity. Herodotus himself recounts that when a fire broke out in an Egyptian home, the people didn't rush to put out the flames or save their belongings first. They tried to save their cats. If a cat jumped into the fire and died, the grief was immense, often leading to deep mourning. Herodotus also says that when a cat died naturally, the whole family would shave off their eyebrows in mourning, a grief ritual that lasted until their eyebrows grew back. Imagine the impact of such a loss on a household. Another story, possibly exaggerated but reflective of the times, tells of a Roman who accidentally killed a cat in Egypt and was lynched by an angry mob, despite Pharaoh Ptolemy III's attempts to protect him and avoid a diplomatic crisis with Rome. This shows that the law and popular belief were so powerful that even royal authority couldn't stand against the collective fury caused by the death of a sacred cat. One of the most famous and maybe most dramatic stories about this cat veneration comes from the Battle of Pelusium in 525 BCE. The Greek historian Polyaenus, in his Stratagems, describes a tactic allegedly used by the Persian king Cambyses against the Egyptians. According to Polyaenus, Cambyses, knowing how much Egyptians revered cats and other sacred animals like dogs, ibises, and sheep, ordered his soldiers to paint pictures of cats on their shields and even carry live cats and other sacred animals on the front lines as a kind of living shield. The idea was that the Egyptians, seeing their sacred animals threatened or pictured on enemy shields, would hesitate to attack for fear of harming a holy creature or witnessing sacrilege. This religious panic supposedly caused confusion and allowed the Persians to win a decisive victory. But is this story true? Modern historians are skeptical. While Egyptian reverence for sacred animals is unquestioned, the idea that this would completely paralyze a trained army is doubtful. Polyaenus wrote centuries later and was known to embellish stories for drama. Still, even if the story isn't literally true, it reflects the widespread ancient view of Egyptians' extreme respect for animals. Whether fact or legend, this story became popular because it fit perfectly with how other cultures saw Egypt's unique religion and deep connection to cats. In a way, the legend itself shows just how deeply rooted the idea was that cats were so sacred to Egyptians they could influence the outcome of a battle. The legal and religious protections for cats give us one of the clearest glimpses into the Egyptian worldview, where the divine and the everyday blended in ways that surprise us today, but were central to their way of life. Their reverence for cats didn't stop at life. It extended well into the afterlife, as shown by the millions of cat mummies archaeologists have uncovered. These finds reveal a fascinating and sometimes unsettling chapter of Egyptian religious practice. The most striking evidence of this feline devotion comes from the huge cat cemeteries scattered across Egypt. Key sites like Bubastis, the center of Bastet's cult, and Saqqara, famous for its extensive catacombs dedicated to sacred animals, were major burial grounds. Places like Beni Hassan have also revealed feline tombs. The scale of these discoveries is staggering. At Bubastis, excavations uncovered tons of feline remains piled in funerary chambers. In Saqqara, Bastet's catacombs contained passageways and rooms filled not only with cats, but also dogs, baboons, and ibises, animals all considered sacred. These mummies vary widely in how they were prepared. Some cats were carefully wrapped and placed in tiny sarcophagi, sometimes with amulets, while others were simply wrapped, suggesting different levels of status or devotion from their owners or temple caretakers. The sheer scale of these burials raises questions about the logistics of breeding, caring for and mummifying so many animals. The reasons behind these cat mummies are complex and reveal a lot about Egyptian religious beliefs and offerings to Bastet. Most cat mummies, especially the huge numbers found at Bubastis, were votive offerings to the goddess Bastet. Pilgrims bought these mummies, often bred specifically for this purpose by temples, and offered them in acts of devotion, hoping for Bastet's blessing, healing, or protection for their families. It was a way to communicate with the divine, a gift meant to win the goddess's favor. To a lesser but still important degree, some cats were mummified to accompany their owners into the afterlife. In the tombs of wealthy people or royalty, carefully prepared cat mummies have been found alongside the deceased, suggesting they were beloved pets expected to travel with their owners for eternity. These cases often involve individual cats with more elaborate preparations, indicating a strong personal bond, simply beloved family members. For many, mummifying their cat was a deeply emotional act of love and mourning. Though rooted in religion, the affection for these animals, who shared daily life, must have been profound. The loss of a pet was marked by rituals, including shaving one's eyebrows in mourning. This was a genuine expression of grief, treating the cat like a family member worthy of funerary rites that promised life beyond death. If you're still with me, I hope you're already subscribed to the channel. I'm the Nighttime Scribe, and my goal is to build a community of night lovers and knowledge seekers, thousands of people from around the world connected by a shared desire to learn more, understand themselves better, and live fuller lives. I always say it, knowing history is key to avoiding the mistakes of the past. So take a moment to subscribe and share this video with a friend who loves learning. And if you're feeling generous, consider sending a super thanks to support this humble servant. Either way, thank you for sharing this moment with me. Now back to the story. The process of mummifying cats shared some steps with human mummification, but was generally simpler. Like humans, the goal was to preserve the body for eternity. For the more elaborate cat mummies, internal organs were removed through an incision, though in many cases, especially the mass-produced votive ones, this step was skipped or done roughly. Next, the body was dried out using natron, a natural salt, which could take several weeks to fully dehydrate the tissues. Once dried, the body was stuffed with sand, resin, or linen to keep its shape, then carefully wrapped in layers of linen bandages, often coated with resin. Sometimes protective amulets were tucked between the wrappings. Some of the more elaborate mummies were decorated with painted plaster to resemble the cat's features, or placed in small wooden or bronze sarcophagi shaped like cats. Though simpler than human mummification, these similar techniques show that Egyptians considered cats worthy of a journey into the afterlife, just like people. As the Egyptian Empire declined and the Romans arrived, the cult of Bastet continued for a while, but attitudes toward cat mummies began to shift. Production of votive mummies became industrialized, creating a trade that churned out huge numbers to meet the demand of pilgrims and tourists. This led to a drop in quality, with many mummies turning out to be simple bundles of bones, or even just a few cat parts, showing the ritual had become more commercial than spiritual. The most surprising and saddest turn came much later. In the 19th century, during the height of Egyptomania, these vast necropolises were rediscovered, but instead of being treasured for their cultural and archaeological value, thousands, maybe millions, of cat mummies were seen as nothing more than commodities. Large shipments were sent to Europe, especially England, where they were ground up and used as fertilizer. Imagine these sacred remains, once objects of devotion and offerings to a goddess, ending their long journey, enriching faraway farm fields. It's an ironic and heartbreaking end for these once revered felines. This is a powerful example of how cultural perceptions can completely change the meaning and fate of objects, even those once considered divine. The presence of cats in Egyptian art and iconography clearly shows how important they were culturally and religiously. From the earliest depictions to the latest, cats were a constant theme, evolving in form and meaning, but always there. Without a doubt, the cat is one of the most frequently portrayed animals in ancient Egyptian art, appearing in a wide range of contexts that highlight just how central they were in artistic expression. In tombs, especially those of nobles and officials from the New Kingdom around 1550–1070 BC, cat images are everywhere. Cats appear not just as decoration but as part of scenes showing the deceased's daily life in the afterlife. They're often pictured sitting under their owner's chair, wearing collars and earrings, showing they were beloved pets. They also show up in marsh scenes, helping their owners catch birds or fish, highlighting their hunting skills and role in providing food. These images reflected life on Earth but also aimed to ensure these activities and the companionship of their cats would continue forever. Cats in tombs could also symbolize protection for the deceased, In papyri, especially the Book of the Dead, cats often appear in symbolic roles. The most famous image is Ra as a giant cat, decapitating the serpent Apophis beneath the Ishid tree, a powerful symbol of order, triumphing over chaos and the sun's daily renewal. This turns the cat from a household animal into a cosmic player in the fight for universal balance. Countless statuettes and amulets made of bronze, wood, or faience show seated cats or Bastet with a cat's head. These weren't just worship items or decorations, but powerful amulets carried for the goddess's protection, fertility, or good luck. The widespread popularity of these objects shows the feline cult reached all social levels. The cat image also appeared on everyday items, jewelry, mirrors, coal containers, furniture, showing how deeply cats were woven into Egyptian life. The cat's image evolved subtly but meaningfully, reflecting changing views and roles across different dynasties. Old Kingdom, AO 2680–2180 BC. Early cat depictions were more generic and sometimes confused with other carnivores. Lionesses like Sekhmet dominated the scene. Domestic cats appeared less often, mostly in household or farming scenes, emphasizing their practical role as pest controllers. The domestic cat wasn't yet widely worshipped as a deity. Middle Kingdom, c. 2050–1650 BC. The domestic cat's image gained prominence, portrayed with more detail and realism, highlighting its elegance and agility. Cats started to be seen more clearly as household companions, though their divine status wasn't yet dominant. New Kingdom, c. 1550–1070 BC. This period was the golden age for domestic cat depictions. Cats became everywhere in tomb art, strongly connected to family life and leisure. The cult of Bastet, in her cat goddess form, peaked, and cat images grew more stylized and overtly religious. The cat's elegance and grace were masterfully captured, reflecting both its physical beauty and sacred status. Late Period and Roman Era, c. 664 BC AD 395. Production of cat statuettes and amulets, often bronze or faience, exploded. While quality varied, the sheer volume shows the feline cult's continued popularity. Cat figures became more standardized, often with pierced ears for earrings, mass-produced to meet the demand for votive offerings. The cat became a universal symbol of Egyptian identity. In short, the cat's image in Egyptian art evolved from a practical pest controller to a beloved companion and finally to a divine symbol. Every painting, carving, and amulet offers a glimpse into the deep, lasting bond Egyptians had with cats, elevating them to a unique place of honor in their culture and faith. In ancient Egypt, death wasn't an end but a transition, a journey into eternity. Both humans and sacred animals played key roles in this journey. At the center of these beliefs and rituals was the pharaoh. The pharaoh wasn't just a king or ruler, he was the living embodiment of divinity on earth, a bridge between humans and gods. His power didn't come from conquest or earthly inheritance, but from his sacred nature. The pharaoh was seen as the incarnation of Horus, the falcon god, son of Osiris and Isis, and the rightful heir to the throne. When he died, he became Osiris, god of the underworld and rebirth, while his successor took on the mantle of Horus. He was also considered the son of Ra, the sun god, giving him a divine lineage and cosmic authority. This dual identity as Horus in life and Osiris in death, combined with his link to Ra, made him the ultimate ruler and guardian of divine order on earth. His word was law, and his presence ensured the Nile's prosperity, good harvests, and the kingdom's stability. As both divine figure and supreme leader, the pharaoh was the high priest of all Egyptian cults, leading temple rituals, offering to the gods, and serving as the ultimate connection between people and the divine. Though he often delegated duties, the highest religious authority always belonged to him. His chief responsibility was maintaining Mat, the essential concept of cosmic order, truth, and justice. The world's balance depended on his actions, his devotion, and his respect for the divine laws governing the universe. An important part of respecting Mat, and a clear example of how deeply connected the human, divine, and natural worlds were in Egyptian cosmology, was the pharaoh's respect for animal life. For the pharaoh, as the guarantor of cosmic order, protecting animals wasn't just about safeguarding property or resources. Animals tied to deities like cats with Bastet, ibises with Thoth, falcons with Horus, or crocodiles with Sobek were seen as living expressions of Mat. Their well-being reflected the health of the kingdom and the favor of the gods. By honoring and protecting these animals, the pharaoh ensured harmony and the continued blessings of the gods upon Egypt. Reverence for animals wasn't just folklore, it was a fundamental pillar of royal authority and the stability of the cosmos under the pharaoh's rule. To the Egyptians, death wasn't an end but a complex transition to a new form of existence in the afterlife. They believed humans were made up of multiple elements, each vital for securing life beyond death. Sacred animals, especially cats, played key roles in this journey. The Egyptian understanding of a person was holistic, made up of several souls or aspects that had to be preserved for eternal life. The Ka was the life force, the essence residing in the body. It was born with the person and left at death but could return to the mummified body for nourishment. It was essentially a person's double. The Ba, often shown as a bird with a human head, represented personality, mobility, and the ability to interact with the world. The Ba could travel between the living world and the afterlife, visiting family or returning to the tomb. It was the glorified spirit, the transformed form of the deceased, who had successfully passed through the afterlife and joined the gods. The union of the Ka and Ba after death was crucial. The Ren was the person's name, considered an essential part of identity. Egyptians believed that as long as a name was spoken or written, the person would continue to exist. The shadow, Shiut, inseparable from the person, also contained part of their essence. But how did these parts relate to the souls of animals? While funerary texts mainly focus on the human soul, the practice of animal veneration and mummification suggests Egyptians believed animals had a soul or essence that could also survive death. Though specific components like Ka or Ba aren't detailed for animals, the fact that they were mummified and buried with offerings shows a belief in their afterlife. We can infer that sacred animals were thought to possess a life force like the Ka and an individual essence like the Ba, making them worthy of preservation. Since these animals were seen as divine manifestations or vessels for the gods, their souls were inherently sacred and deserved their own journey to eternity. Mummifying a cat, for example, wasn't just an offering to Bastet, but also a way to ensure that the cat's essence, and by extension the goddess's blessing, would continue to exist and protect. In the often perilous journey through the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, animals played crucial roles as guides and protectors. This belief is reflected throughout iconography and funerary texts. Anubis, the jackal-headed god, is perhaps the best-known example. As the god of embalming and guardian of the necropolises, he guided the deceased through the afterlife and oversaw the vital weighing of the heart ceremony, where the deceased's heart was measured against the feather of Mat. Images of Anubis accompany the dead in tombs, symbolizing his role as protector and guide on the path to eternal life. Snakes and crocodiles had a dual nature. While often symbols of danger and chaos, some were also protectors. The Uraeus serpent symbolized royal protection, and crocodile gods like Sobek were called upon to guard against threats in the underworld's waters. The cat, while not a direct guide like Anubis, was a powerful protector against chaos because of its connection to Bastet and its role in Ra's defeat of Apophis. Cat amulets and mummies found in tombs likely served to call on this power to ward off demons and ensure a safe passage. Its keen night vision and ability to hunt snakes and rodents made it an ideal guardian against unseen underworld dangers. In short, animals weren't just passive companions on the journey to the afterlife. They were powerful beings with specific roles and symbolism, able to influence the fate of the deceased. Their presence helped guarantee a safe journey, overcome obstacles, and reach the final paradise, known as the Fields of Yaru. The link between humans, animals, and gods crossed the boundary of life and death, uniting all in the quest for eternity. To truly understand the care Egyptians took in mummifying cats, it helps to know about their human mummification practices. It was a complex process based on a deep belief in life after death and the need to preserve the body for the eternal journey. Embalming was both an art and a science perfected over millennia, a ritual lasting about 70 days. Its main goal was preserving the body so the Ka and Ba could recognize and reunite with it in the afterlife. Brain extraction was the first and often most delicate step. A long, thin hook was inserted through the nose, passing through the cribriform plate of the ethmoid bone to remove the brain, which was then discarded or dissolved. Unlike other organs, the brain wasn't considered as important. Next came evisceration. An incision was made on the left side of the abdomen, and through it, the lungs, liver, stomach, and intestines were carefully removed. The heart, however, was left inside the body because it was seen as the center of intelligence and emotion and played a crucial role in judgment in the afterlife. The removed organs were then cleaned with palm wine and spices and dehydrated with natron, a natural salt with drying properties. Once dried, each organ was wrapped in linen and placed in special canopic jars. The body itself was dehydrated by covering and packing it with large amounts of natron. It stayed this way for about 40 days to ensure complete drying and prevent decay. After dehydration, the natron was removed, the body cleaned, and then filled with materials like linen, wood shavings, resins, or even onions to restore its shape and make it look more natural. The skin was rubbed with oils and perfumes. Wrapping the body was a careful, detailed process that could last up to 15 days. The body was wrapped in layers upon layers of linen bandages, sometimes hundreds of meters of fabric, often soaked in resin. Protective amulets like heart scarabs or the Eye of Horus were tucked between the layers to guard and guide the deceased in the afterlife. Fingers and joints were wrapped individually before the general wrapping began. Finally, the mummy was placed inside a series of nested coffins, often beautifully decorated and shaped like the deceased, and then sealed inside a stone sarcophagus, the final resting place. Canopic jars were special containers made of alabaster, pottery, or stone, used to store the mummified internal organs. There were 4 jars, each guarded by a specific protective god known as one of the sons of Horus. Imseti, human head, protected the liver. Hapi, baboon head, guarded the lungs. Duamutef, jackal head, watched over the stomach, and Kebasenuef, falcon head, protected the intestines. These gods safeguarded the vital organs believed necessary in the afterlife. The jars were kept inside a canopic chest within the burial chamber near the sarcophagus. In cat mummification, although specific canopic jars weren't used, the idea of preserving organs, sometimes roughly, reflects a similar desire to maintain wholeness for life after death. One of the most important and moving rituals wasn't part of embalming itself, but a symbolic ceremony performed just before burial. priests used special ritual tools to touch the mouth, eyes, and ears of the mummy, or the statue of the deceased. This opening of the mouth ceremony was meant to restore the deceased's ability to see, hear, speak, breathe, and eat in the afterlife. It was believed that embalming preserved the body but left it inert. This ritual reactivated the senses and vital functions, allowing the Ka and Ba to reunite with the body and letting the deceased receive offerings and enjoy eternal life. Without it, the mummy would remain mute and lifeless, unable to function in the realm of the dead. Famous pharaohs' mummies, like those of Tutankhamun and Ramses II, aren't just archaeological treasures. They offer invaluable insight into Egyptian funerary beliefs and practices. Tutankhamun's tomb, discovered intact in 1922 by Howard Carter, revolutionized our understanding of mummification and ancient Egyptian life. His mummy, found inside an impressive solid coffin, showed embalming at the highest quality. Studies of his body revealed details about his health, age at death, around 19, and possible causes of death. The many amulets wrapped with him and the riches in his tomb, including small canopic coffins holding his organs, show the care and hope invested in ensuring his safe journey to the afterlife and eternal life as a god. Ramses II, one of Egypt's most powerful and long-reigning pharaohs, provides even more insights. His well-preserved mummy allowed detailed studies, including DNA and dental exams, that showed severe arthritis and dental problems. Remarkably, his mummy traveled to France in 1976 for treatment of a fungal infection. For the trip, he was even issued an Egyptian passport listing his profession as King Deceased. This highlights not only the mummy's excellent preservation, but the ongoing respect for these historical figures. His mummy also revealed sophisticated embalming techniques, including linen and resin fillings to keep facial and body shape, plus a stitched abdominal incision. These mummies are more than preserved bodies. They're time capsules revealing the Egyptians' deep religious beliefs, obsession with eternity, and the sophistication of their funerary rituals. Understanding the immense effort behind human mummification helps us appreciate why they extended these practices to sacred animals like cats, aiming to secure their own salvation and maintain a lasting bond with the divine. The Egyptian journey to the afterlife wasn't a simple leap into the unknown. It was carefully planned and guided by a vast collection of funerary texts, culminating in the dreaded judgment of Osiris. Animals played crucial symbolic roles in this otherworldly process. The most famous of these texts, the Book of the Dead, properly called The Spells for Going Forth by Day, wasn't just a travel guide for the afterlife, although it included maps and descriptions of the underworld's regions. More importantly, it was a collection of protective spells, hymns, prayers, and magical formulas designed to help the deceased safely navigate the dangers of the Duat and ultimately be transformed into an Ak, a glorified spirit in the fields of Yaru paradise. These texts appeared on papyri, tomb walls, pyramid texts, coffin texts, and even on sarcophagi, providing the knowledge needed to identify and overcome obstacles, knowing demon names, recognizing doors and guardian gods, reciting magical words to open gates or ward off dangers, and understanding rituals like the crucial judgment of Osiris. They served as a spiritual survival manual, a library of arcane wisdom the deceased needed to navigate the complex realm of the dead. Without these spells and knowledge, the soul risked being lost, devoured, or trapped forever in limbo. The climax of the soul's journey was the weighing of the heart, overseen by Osiris, Lord of the Underworld. This iconic scene from the Book of the Dead shows the deceased facing their final judgment. At the center stood a scale weighing the heart, considered the seat of consciousness, morality, and memory, against the feather of Mot, symbolizing truth, justice, cosmic order, and moral integrity. Anubis, the jackal-headed embalming god, adjusted the scales, while Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom and writing, recorded the verdict. The deceased had to recite the negative confession, or 42 declarations, denying a list of sins committed against gods and humans. If the heart was pure, that is, it didn't outweigh Mot's feather, it meant the deceased lived a just life and upheld cosmic order. Passing this test, the deceased was declared true of voice and granted eternal life in the fields of Yaru. But what if the heart was heavy with sin, outweighing the feather? That's when the fearsome creature Ammit entered the scene. Her name means the devourer, or devourer of the dead. Ammit was a terrifying hybrid with a crocodile's head, lion's front, and hippopotamus hindquarters. If judgment was unfavorable, the heart was handed over to Ammit, who devoured it, signifying the second death, total annihilation of the soul. The deceased would be denied an afterlife, forever excluded from existence. Ammit's presence was a stark warning and a strong motivation to live a virtuous life in harmony with Mot. Beyond divine figures like Anubis and Ammit, animals also appear in more domestic funerary scenes. Cats in tombs weren't just reminders of earthly life, they symbolized the continuation of family bonds and companionship in eternity. A cat pictured under its owner's chair showed that affectionate, protective relationship carried over into the afterlife. Plus, as we saw with the great cat who defeated Apophis, cats symbolized protection against chaos, and their image in tombs acted as a safeguard against malevolent underworld forces. Other animals appear frequently too, both in symbolic roles and daily life scenes. Birds and fish, often shown in domestic or fishing contexts, symbolized abundance in the fields of Yaru. Cattle represented agricultural prosperity for the deceased in eternal life. Dogs, though less revered than cats, were loyal household companions and protectors, often appearing in tombs as faithful friends. In short, the Book of the Dead and Osiris's judgment didn't just map out human eternity, they wove animals into the very fabric of the afterlife, from divine guides and defenders against evil to beloved companions ensuring a full, rich eternity. Animals were inseparable from the Egyptian vision of life after death, emphasizing the deep connection between the worlds of the living and the dead. Daily life in ancient Egypt was full of magic and symbolism, often expressed through amulets and talismans. These small objects weren't just decorations, they were tangible pieces of divinity, charged with protective powers and good fortune. Many were closely tied to the animal kingdom, reflecting the belief that the qualities and powers of certain creatures could be channeled for human benefit. Of all these amulets, the scarab is by far the most iconic and widespread in ancient Egypt. Known as Khepr or Khepri, this small beetle, specifically the dung beetle, Scarabaeus sacer, was a powerful symbol of rebirth, regeneration, and the rising sun. The connection between the scarab and creation comes from observing its life cycle. Egyptians saw the male beetle rolling a ball of dung along the ground, from which new beetles seemed to emerge out of nowhere. This was a perfect analogy for the sun god Khepri, who each morning rolled the solar disk across the horizon, bringing the sun back to life. Thus, the scarab became a symbol of spontaneous creation and the constant renewal of life and the sun. It was also linked to Atum, the creator god. Types of scarab amulets included heart scarabs, the most important type, placed over the mummy's heart or within the chest wrappings. Often the underside was inscribed with a spell from Chapter 30b of the Book of the Dead, urging the heart not to testify against the deceased during Osiris's judgment. These were crucial to ensuring a safe passage through the afterlife. Seal scarabs. worn as rings or used as seals. These had inscriptions or images on the underside to mark documents or property. Commemorative scarabs, larger scarabs inscribed to mark important events, like Amenhotep III's marriage to Tia. Votive scarabs, offered to the gods, especially Ra Kepri, to ask for favor or give thanks for blessings. Their presence was everywhere. Scarabs have been found made from all sorts of materials: steatite, lapis lazuli, amethyst, gold, silver, and faience, and worn as necklaces, bracelets, rings, and as essential parts of funerary equipment accompanying the deceased into eternity. The Ankh is probably the most recognizable Egyptian symbol after the pyramid. Its distinctive shape, a cross topped with a loop, represents life itself. Not just earthly life, but eternal life and immortality. Often called the key of life, gods are frequently shown holding the Ankh, offering it to pharaohs as a symbol of life's infusion and the promise of everlasting existence. It was a popular amulet for the living and an indispensable element in tombs, ensuring rebirth in the afterlife. The Eye of Horus, or Ujjat, meaning the Whole One, is another powerful amulet. It represents the eye of the falcon god Horus, which was torn out and magically restored by Thoth. As a result, it became a strong symbol of protection, healing, and good health. People believed the Ujjat could ward off the evil eye, disease, and danger. Sailors painted it on their boats' bows for safe voyages, and the deceased carried it for protection in the underworld. Its design, based on mathematical fractions, also linked it to wisdom and healing. The Djed pillar, resembling a backbone or a bundle of bound reeds, is closely tied to Osiris. It symbolizes stability, endurance, and permanence. It may originally have represented the cedar tree where Osiris's body was found, or even a post supporting a roof. As an amulet, it was popular in tombs to ensure the deceased's resurrection and the stability of their existence in the afterlife, reflecting Osiris's restored spine. The Tiat, often called Isis's knot or Isis's blood knot, looks like a cloth knot or belt and is connected to the goddess Isis. Like the Ankh was the key of life, the Tiat was its feminine counterpart. It symbolized protection, especially against danger, female fertility, and Isis's magical power. Often made of red jasper, whose color evoked blood, it was believed to have protective and revitalizing powers. It was a common amulet among women and placed in mummies to invoke Isis's maternal protection. Last but not least, cat-shaped amulets were hugely popular and found across almost every level of Egyptian society. Because of Cat's connection with Bastet, these amulets captured her protective and lucky qualities. Wearing a cat amulet was believed to protect the home and family, ward off evil spirits and disease, especially protecting children, and promote fertility and motherhood. Reflecting Bastet's joyful, festive nature, these amulets brought good luck and happiness, and guarded the afterlife against dangers, particularly snakes and harmful rodents. People wore them as necklaces, bracelets, or kept them in their homes. Their popularity over thousands of years shows the deep belief in the cat's power, both as a living animal and a symbol, to connect humans with the divine, bringing blessings and security to those who honored them. These amulets offer one of the clearest windows into how Egyptians integrated the sacred into daily life and worked to ensure well-being in this world and the next. The legacy of cats in Egypt and the religion that honored them didn't remain buried in history. It echoed through time, even challenging one of the most dramatic religious shifts in ancient history. One of the most unique and controversial episodes in Egyptian history is the Amarna period, led by Pharaoh Akhenaten, originally named Amenhotep. During the 18th dynasty, he launched a genuine religious revolution, abandoning Egypt's thousands of years of polytheism to establish exclusive worship of Aten, the sun disk. This wasn't just elevating one god above others, it was a form of monotheism, or at least radical henotheism, where Aten alone was the true focus of worship. Akhenaten closed the temples of the old gods, seized their wealth, erased their names from monuments, and even moved the capital to a newly founded city, Akhetaten, modern Amarna, dedicated entirely to Aten. So, how did Aten's monotheism affect animal worship? Although affection for pets wasn't banned, the ritual worship and mummification of sacred animals took a serious hit. By centralizing divinity in a single god, Aten, who was shown neither as human nor animal but as a sun disk, with rays ending in outstretched hands, Akhenaten stripped the other gods of their power, and with them, the animals that embodied or symbolized them. For example, Bastet's cult, with its sacred cats and temples full of felines, was suppressed or pushed underground. The mass worship of ibises for Thoth or bulls for Apis largely stopped. In Amarna art, while scenes of family life became unusually naturalistic, and cats may have still been kept as pets, the images of gods with animal heads disappeared entirely. Animals lost their role as divine vessels in public worship. However, this change was short-lived. After Akhenaten's death and the brief reigns of his successors, Atenism was rejected. The temples of the old gods reopened, their names were restored, and the polytheistic cult, including the worship of sacred animals, came back with renewed energy. In fact, the production of animal mummies, especially cat mummies, reached its peak in the decades following the Amarna period, as if Egyptian society was reaffirming its ancient traditions with even greater passion. This brief chapter shows us that even the most radical revolution couldn't break the deep bond between Egyptians, their gods, and the animal world, and that feline worship in particular survived and thrived once the traditional order was restored. The legacy of Egyptian civilization, and especially its connection with cats, went beyond its borders, leaving clear traces in other cultures throughout history. Egypt was undoubtedly the center of cat domestication and the starting point for its spread around the world. For thousands of years, Egyptians tightly controlled their cats, treating them as national treasures and sacred beings. Exporting a cat was punishable by law, and the efforts to recover smuggled cats show how highly they valued them. Still, because of seafaring trade and cats' usefulness as pest controllers on ships, their spread beyond Egypt was inevitable, though gradual. It's believed that the Phoenicians, expert maritime traders, played a major role in carrying Egyptian cats to other lands along their trade routes. The Greeks and Romans first encountered them as exotic curiosities or practical pest killers on ships. That's how Felis catus, the domestic cat we know today, began its journey from the Nile, adapting to new environments and cultures, always carrying a hint of its sacred origin. In Greece and Rome, cats arrived later than dogs or ferrets as household pets. Initially, weasels and even snakes were preferred for pest control. Cats became more common during the Hellenistic period and throughout the Roman Empire. But once they arrived, their grace and hunting skills quickly made them popular. They were prized for their beauty and their ability to keep mice and snakes away. A key factor in spreading feline reverence across the Greco-Roman world was the cult of Isis. As worship of the Egyptian goddess Isis spread throughout the Roman Empire, even reaching Britain, her associated pantheon and symbols traveled too. Isis, the universal goddess of magic, motherhood, and life, was often linked to Bastet, the cat goddess. In Isis's temples and rituals, feline elements were everywhere. Cat statuettes and even representations of Bastet herself. Followers of Isis adopted the cat as a symbol of protection and good fortune, wearing cat amulets and sometimes even mummifying cats in Isis sanctuaries outside Egypt. This blending of cults helped the sacred cat's image cross borders and become part of the religious life of other Mediterranean cultures, though in a modified form. As cats spread worldwide, their image and symbolism intertwined with the folklore and superstitions of many cultures. This raises a question: how much of the cat's mystique was a direct inheritance from Egypt? It's likely that much of the mystery surrounding cats and their dual nature as bringers of luck or misfortune, protectors or troublemakers, has roots in their sacred Egyptian origins, protection and good fortune. In many European and Asian cultures, cats, especially black cats, were seen as lucky charms for sailors and guardians of the home. This association with protection and prosperity echoes their role in Egypt as household sentinels and symbols of abundance, mystery, and the supernatural. Cats' ability to see in the dark, their stealth and sometimes mysterious behavior gave them a spiritual aura. Some traditions linked cats to witches or the underworld. Others viewed them as benevolent magical beings. This duality may reflect Bastet's own dual nature, the domestic cat's sweetness combined with the lioness's fierceness, or even Sekhmet's bad luck for black cats. Interestingly, while in Egypt a black cat could symbolize blessing, its dark fur linked to Bastet's realm, in parts of medieval Europe, black cats became associated with bad luck, witchcraft, and evil. This shift likely came from Christianity's demonization of pagan symbols or local superstitions merging with older beliefs. Even in this negative view, the underlying belief was that cats held supernatural power. Though every culture developed its own interpretations, there's no denying that the powerful image of the cat in ancient Egypt, its deification and role in life and death, set a precedent and laid the foundation for global fascination with these animals. From Phoenician merchant ships to folk legends in distant lands, Egypt's feline legacy has echoed through the ages, leaving an unmistakable mark on how humanity sees these remarkable creatures. The mysteries of ancient Egypt began to unravel with modern discoveries and the birth of Egyptology as a scholarly field, revealing the cat's central role in that civilization. The biggest breakthrough came from Jean-François Champollion, who in 1822 did what many thought impossible. He deciphered Egyptian hieroglyphs using the Rosetta Stone. Found by Napoleon's troops in 1799, this stone had the same text written in 3 scripts: hieroglyphic, Demotic, and ancient Greek. Champollion, with his deep knowledge of Coptic, a descendant of ancient Egyptian, used the Greek to unlock the meaning of the hieroglyphs, a mystery for centuries until then. This wasn't just linguistic genius, it was the key that opened the door to an entire civilization. Suddenly, temple inscriptions, tomb writings, and papyri stopped being just pictures. They became stories, prayers, historical records, and rich accounts of Egypt's deep relationship with their animals, especially their revered cats. Champollion's decipherment gave us, for the first time, direct insight into how the Egyptians themselves thought and felt about these divine creatures. Once hieroglyphs became readable, archaeologists began uncovering undeniable evidence of feline devotion almost immediately. Bubastis. As mentioned earlier, excavations at Bubastis, the heart of Bastet's cult, revealed not only the remains of her magnificent temple described by Herodotus, but also vast cat necropolises. Thousands, even millions of cat mummies were found stacked in chambers and corridors. These discoveries confirmed the industrial scale at which cats were bred and mummified as votive offerings. Saqqara. Another key site, Saqqara, yielded the immense catacomb of Bastet and other galleries dedicated to animal mummification. Archaeologists found not only cats, but also mummified hawks, ibises, and baboons, each arranged as offerings. These finds didn't just back up ancient descriptions. They provided overwhelming, tangible proof of Egyptian devotion to their sacred animals. Ongoing studies reveal details about the cat's health, diets, and mummification techniques. These archaeological triumphs deepened our understanding of Egyptian religion and cemented the cat's image as a cornerstone of that culture, a creature revered in life and death. Today, cats hold a firm place in popular culture. From classic cartoons like Tom and Sylvester to the endless memes flooding social media, cats are beloved, funny, and sometimes mysteriously aloof. But how much of their modern mystique, their enigmatic, aloof attitude, actually comes from their Egyptian past? It's reasonable to say a large part of today's feline mystique comes straight from ancient Egypt, the so-called feline attitude. The cat as an independent, elegant, mysterious, sometimes moody creature reflects exactly how Egyptians saw their cats. Unlike dogs, they weren't submissive. They carried a dignity and independence that made them special, almost divine. That regal bearing we admire in today's house cats may well be a shadow of their history as objects of worship, symbols of luck and protection. While black cats have carried negative connotations in some Western cultures, in contrast to Egypt, where black was often a mark of blessing, the general belief that cats bring good luck, especially to the home, remains widespread. This direct link to household protection and prosperity is clearly inherited from Bastet and the cat's role in Egyptian family life. Connection to the supernatural. Cats' association with magic, the occult, and countless modern legends likely comes from their status in Egypt as mediators between the earthly and divine. Their ability to see in the dark and unpredictable behavior gave them an enduring mystical aura, a lasting cultural icon. The image of the Egyptian cat, with almond-shaped eyes and elegant posture, has itself become a cultural symbol that transcends its historical origins. Designers, artists, and content creators, whether consciously or not, draw on this aesthetic, keeping alive the link between cats and ancient wisdom and mystery. So even though modern cats aren't worshipped as gods, they carry a silent legacy. Each time we catch a cat's penetrating gaze or stealthy walk, we glimpse, if only briefly, the time when cats were divine and scarabs were amulets in the fascinating religion of ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt, with its pharaohs, pyramids, and anthropomorphic gods, has fascinated humanity non-stop. But why does this fascination last for millennia, and how does the cat's image deepen that mystery? The answer lies in several key pillars of Egypt's legacy. One of the strongest reasons we're drawn to Egypt is its obsession with immortality. Unlike cultures that focused mainly on earthly life or abstract ideas of the afterlife, Egyptians devoted huge resources to securing eternal life for their pharaohs, and to some extent for others too. Pyramids, tombs, mummification, funerary texts, all aimed at overcoming physical death. This universal hope for immortality speaks to us deeply, seeing a whole civilization organized around this idea, developing sophisticated embalming techniques, and a complex afterlife cosmology invites reflection on our own mortality and hope for life beyond what we know. The care Egyptians lavished on bodies, the provisions for eternal life, and the belief that every action in life shaped the judgment by Osiris offer us a grand vision of the human spirit's persistence. Another captivating aspect is their profound, tangible connection with nature and the cosmos. Their religion and daily life were bound to the Nile's cycles, the sun's rise and set, the stars, and crucially, the animal world. They didn't see humans as separate from nature, but as part of a living divine universe. Their gods appeared in animal forms: falcons, jackals, crocodiles, and, of course, cats. This connection wasn't just symbolic, it was the foundation of their cosmic order, Ma'at. The Nile's flood was the breath of a god. The sun was a deity crossing the sky. Animals were incarnations of the sacred. This holistic view, where the divine and natural worlds are deeply intertwined, stands in sharp contrast to many modern views and offers a refreshing model for living in harmony with the environment. Finally, the beauty and mystery of ancient Egypt are irresistible draws. Its monumental temples, intricate hieroglyphs, and stylized art carry an ageless elegance and an enigmatic aura. Every statue and relief seems to guard a hidden secret, and within this web of mystery, the cat amplifies the effect. With its own mysterious nature, silent grace, and eyes that seem to hold ancestral wisdom, the cat became the perfect symbol for Egyptian spirituality. It's not just that cats were gods, but how the Egyptians captured their essence in art, wove them into every part of life, and gave them a role in death. That total immersion lifts the cat from mere animal to emblem of Egyptian civilization itself. To worship a domestic animal as a deity strikes us today as one of the culture's greatest oddities, and also one of its most charming, mysterious qualities. The cat embodies Egypt's paradox, the familiar and the divine, the earthly and the transcendent, the everyday and the sacred. It's this blend, the quest for immortality, the deep bond with nature, and an aesthetic steeped in mystery, embodied in such an ordinary creature as the cat, that ensures Egypt's legacy continues to captivate us, inviting us to see beyond the obvious and imagine a world where cats truly were gods. We've traveled across millennia, from the fertile Nile banks to complex divine pantheons, to uncover the secrets of a civilization where the ordinary and extraordinary met. Now, as we wrap up, it's time to reflect on the profound legacy left by ancient Egypt, a legacy curiously still guided by a feline paw. Throughout this journey, we've seen that Egyptian religion, far from being a jumble of odd superstitions, was a coherent, complex system deeply rooted in its environment. Every god, every ritual, every belief was tightly connected to the Nile, the sun, the desert, and the cycles of life and death. It was a faith devoted to balance, Ma'at, in every part of existence, from the vast universe down to the home. At the heart of this worldview, the cat wasn't just an animal, a pet, or a pest controller. It was a foundational pillar of their understanding of both divine and earthly life, from guarding the home against vermin to embodying the goddess Bastet, from symbolizing fertility and joy to playing a key role in Ra's defeat of chaos. The cat was a real bridge between humans and the divine. Its sacred status, enshrined in strict laws and honored with funerary rites, shows its unique place in Egyptian society and religion. The cat was a living symbol of the sacred in everyday life. Though formal cat worship faded long ago, ancient Egypt remains alive in our imagination. Its allure thrives in popular culture, art, and literature, fueling countless films, books, video games, and documentaries. Pyramids, pharaohs, mummies, and hieroglyphs are instantly recognizable, evoking mystery and grandeur. Within this vast legacy, the cat stands out as one of its most captivating ambassadors. Its elegant, enigmatic image, connection to the divine, and role as a household companion make it a bridge between distant past and present, from 19th century Egyptomania to today's internet-driven cat culture. The shadow of Bastet and Egypt's reverence for these felines still resonate. Every time we catch a cat's regal, inscrutable gaze, a spark of that ancient mysticism flickers in our mind. Ultimately, the story of cats in ancient Egypt invites a deeper reflection. It speaks to humanity's universal quest for meaning, eternity, and connection to the divine. Every culture seeks to understand its place in the cosmos, make sense of life and death, and find ways to transcend the temporary. The Egyptians expressed this quest uniquely in the rhythms of the Nile through worship of a vast yet interconnected pantheon, and remarkably, they saw this quest embodied in the cat, an animal that evolved from a useful hunter into a venerated deity, a companion in life and afterlife, a symbol of protection and life's joy. So next time you see your cat napping in a sunbeam or stalking with silent grace, remember its ancient lineage. Think of the Egyptians thousands of years ago who found divinity in their eyes, protection in their claws, and eternity in their purr. It reminds us that the sacred can show up in the most unexpected places, and sometimes the greatest mysteries are revealed through the silent, graceful dance of a feline paw, a stark contrast to Egypt's pyramids or India's temples filled with animal-headed gods. The rich and diverse Native American cultures nurtured a relationship with animals that, though expressed differently, was just as profound and reverent. Their goal wasn't to build temples to animal-shaped gods, but to weave the spirit, lessons, and wisdom of creatures into the very fabric of life, spirituality, and community identity. For these nations, humans weren't conquerors of the animal world, but humble, integral parts of a great interconnected circle of life. Every creature, from the tiniest insect to the mightiest bison, held a sacred purpose and a lesson to teach. Animals were totems, clan or family guardians, and spiritual guides, conveying wisdom through their traits and behaviors. They were believed to be messengers between the human world and the spirit realm, connecting people with the Great Spirit or their ancestors. Their stories, ritual dances, and songs didn't just imitate animals' movements and sounds. They honored their spirit and sought to absorb their power. Deep observation of the natural world was the greatest university, and animals were its wisest teachers. Take the wolf, for example. For many tribes, especially those from the Great Plains and eastern woodlands, like the Lakota, Shawnee, and Iroquois, the wolf wasn't the sinister predator often portrayed in European stories. Instead, it symbolized deep wisdom, leadership, and above all, loyalty to family and community. They observed how wolves lived, hunted, and protected their pack with remarkable coordination and devotion. This social structure made them masters of communal life, teaching the importance of cooperation, strategy, both literal and metaphorical, and the need to care for the most vulnerable members of the group. A warrior guided by the wolf spirit was not only brave and clever, but also deeply loyal to his people and wise in his decisions, leading by example and putting the pack's well-being first. Many tribes have creation stories where the wolf plays a key role, often as an ancestor who helped shape the world or teach the first humans. Wolves' howls, mysterious to human ears, were seen as a way to communicate with spirits, a profound connection to the soul of the world. The bear held immense respect in nearly every Native American culture, from the Cherokee and Navajo to the Quileute of the Pacific Northwest. Its ability to hibernate through the harsh winter and re-emerge in spring made it a powerful symbol of healing, rebirth, and life's cycles. The bear was considered a great healer, a master of herbal medicine, and a creature of formidable strength. Its upright, almost human-like posture gave it a special connection to people, often seen as a brother or close relative. For the Ojibwe, the bear was a protective and healing spirit. Many clans or totems were named after the bear, with members known for their healing skills and protective roles. Bear dance ceremonies were common, where participants mimicked the bear's movements to call on its power and wisdom for healing. It was believed the bear could move easily between the dream world and the physical realm, connecting the two. Those who followed the bear totem sought introspection, the ability to heal themselves and others, and the strength to overcome hardship, trusting that after darkness, renewal always comes. Soaring above all was the eagle, majestic and watchful, venerated by nearly every tribe, from the Lakota to the Hopi and Iroquois. The eagle and other birds of prey like the hawk served as messengers between heaven and earth, with incredible eyesight and the power to reach breathtaking heights. They were seen as the only creatures able to touch the face of the Great Spirit, Wakang Thanka for the Lakota, and carry messages back to humans. A symbol of freedom, vision, honor, courage, and spiritual connection, the eagle represented the ability to see from a higher perspective, to hold a clear vision of the future, and to bring messages of peace and power. Its feathers, especially tail feathers, were sacred, used in ceremonial headdresses, peace pipes, and rituals. They were never taken without permission or a prayer of thanks. Receiving an eagle feather was a huge honor, a sign of respect and a direct blessing from the heavens, usually reserved for the bravest warriors or wisest elders. Beyond these, countless other animals held important places in the spiritual web. The buffalo was sacred to plains tribes, providing food, shelter, and clothing, symbolizing abundance and generosity. The turtle was often seen as Mother Earth or the creator of the continent in many origin stories. The beaver symbolized ingenuity and building. The coyote often played the trickster, a clever teacher delivering vital lessons through humor and chaos. Across this vast and diverse continent, the relationship with animals was a constant dialogue, a shared learning passed down through stories, songs, and rituals. Animals were not just inhabitants of the land. They were teachers, relatives, and sacred symbols of a cosmic interconnectedness, a deep harmony between humans and nature that continues to offer wisdom and inspire respect today. In the towering Andes, pre-Columbian cultures led by the Incas developed a rich worldview deeply tied to their geography and native animals. Unlike Egypt's direct worship of animal-headed gods, in the Andes, certain animals were seen as living representatives of the three levels of the universe, acting as bridges between worlds and embodying cosmic wisdom and balance. This Andean trilogy of the condor, puma, and amaru, serpent, wasn't just symbolic. It formed the very foundation of their worldview, a spiritual map etched into earth, sky, and depths. For the Andean peoples, the universe was divided into three interconnected worlds. Hanam Pacha, the upper world, the celestial realm of gods and elevated spirits, home to the sun, Inti, and the moon, Mamaquila. Ke Pacha, the middle earthly world, the realm of the living, where humans, animals, and plants dwell and daily life unfolds. Uku Pacha, the interior subterranean world, the realm of the dead, ancestors, fertility spirits, and renewal, often linked to caves, springs, and the underworld. Each animal of the trilogy guarded and represented one of these worlds, together symbolizing the universe's wholeness and the need to maintain harmony. The Andean condor, vulture gryphus, the majestic raptor with the largest wingspan in the world, was the undisputed lord of Hanam Pacha. Seen soaring effortlessly over the Andes' highest peaks, the condor acted as a messenger between gods and humans. Its solitary flight and ability to soar above the clouds made it the perfect link to carry human prayers to the heavens and bring divine messages back to earth. To the Incas, the condor symbolized strength, freedom, power, and an elevated vision. It was also believed to lift the souls of the dead to Hanan Pacha, guiding them on their journey after death. The condor's image appears throughout Inca mythology and art, in ceramics, textiles, and architecture, a fascinating fact. The Temple of the Condor at Machu Picchu is an archaeological marvel, a natural rock carved into the condor's head, flanked by stones representing its wings. Scholars believe it was used for rituals connecting the condor with the celestial world, ceremonies celebrating continuity. Today, in some Andean communities in Peru, like the Apurimac region, The controversial Yawar Fiesta, Blood Festival, still takes place, where a wild condor is tied to a bull's back. While this festival blends cultural traditions and has sparked debates about animal treatment, it traces back to ancient beliefs about the battle between the Andean world, condor, and the Spanish realm, bull. The condor remains a living symbol of Andean identity and resistance. Releasing rehabilitated condors is a deeply spiritual event, marked by traditional ceremonies reaffirming its sacred role. The puma concolor, an agile and powerful feline living in both mountains and jungles, represented Pacha, the earthly world. This solitary predator, known for strength, patience, and cunning, symbolized earthly power, wisdom, intelligence, and strategy. It protected the people, guarding life and balance in the world of the living. The puma embodied qualities essential for survival and leadership. Its adaptability and majesty made it a symbol of royalty and nobility. A notable example, the Inca capital Cusco is said to have been designed in the shape of a puma. The zigzag walls of Sacsayhuaman represented the feline's head, while the Coricancha, Temple of the Sun, symbolized its tail. This integration highlights the puma's central role in Inca cosmology, and their desire for the city to reflect this sacred animal's power and protection. Puma images are common in pre-Columbian ceramics, metalwork, and textiles, often depicting its strength and grace. The serpent, called Amaru in Quechua, represented Uku Pacha, the subterranean or inner world. At first, this might seem an odd choice, but for the Andeans, the serpent was much more than a crawling reptile. Its ability to shed its skin made it a powerful symbol of renewal, transformation, and life's continuity. Its winding movements and underground life connected it with water, springs, Earth's fertility, and ancestral wisdom. Amaru was often pictured as a gigantic mythical serpent, sometimes two-headed or winged, symbolizing water, lightning, primal force, and even the Milky Way. It could travel between worlds, linking the underworld with the surface and through lightning or rainbows, sometimes even the sky. Another interesting fact, the Maskai Pacha, the Inca royal crown, represented the Amaru, symbolizing ancestral power and connection to the underworld, the source of fertility and renewal. At Machu Picchu, the Temple of the Serpent, also interpreted as the Temple of the Condor or a cave with a carved serpent, highlights this symbol in sacred architecture. In Chavin art, a much older pre-Inca culture from about 1000 to 200 BC, serpents were a dominant motif, often shown with fangs, symbolizing fertility, duality, and connection to Earth's forces. The persistence of this symbolism into Inca times and some contemporary Andean beliefs shows Amaru's lasting power. Beyond this main trio, other animals played important roles. The llama and alpaca, Andean camelids, essential for meat, wool, and transport, also held sacred status. They featured prominently in ceremonies honoring Pachamama, Mother Earth, including Capacocha llama sacrifices and, in rare cases, human sacrifices to ensure community harmony and prosperity. Their gentleness and usefulness tied them closely to people's well-being. In the cloud forest foothills, the jaguar, or tarongo, was a potent symbol of strength, agility, mystery, and spiritual connection. As a nocturnal hunter, it was linked to darkness, dreams, and transformation. Venerating animals in Andean cultures wasn't about dominating them, but recognizing their wisdom and learning from their qualities. It was a way of living in deep harmony with nature, where every creature mirrored cosmic truths and reminded everyone that all life is connected, from the soaring condor in the sky to the serpent in the earth's depths. This legacy of respect and coexistence remains relevant today. I hope you enjoyed this story and found it relaxing to listen to a bit of good history. This is The Nighttime Scribe, your faithful companion for sleepless nights. If you liked the story, please leave a like and subscribe to join this nocturnal, thoughtful community. Thanks for listening. Until our next adventure.